I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Regarding minutes, apparently there's, the minutes from 5/27 aren't ready as yet, and the ones from 6/24 will be handled at the next agenda. So that there's nothing to do, to approve relative to the minutes. First item on the agenda is a small project, NACC number 152, 300 Abbott Street, Sergeant School. Is there someone from the Sergeant School here? Apparently not.
Okay. Heidi assisted him with this. It's just, I know Doug had some questions, but we went out and, told them what a filing would consist of to construct a basketball court in jurisdiction from stormwater management and the like on a site that's not a single-family home site. So they found a way to locate the court outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, but they were unable to take the little ramp is about 96 feet from the wetland that comes off in blue into the swing set area. So
I guess the concerns or the questions I had is that you have apparently a pathway, not a ramp. So the land must be relatively flat, leading to a sand pile with swings on it. And they say it's for handicapped accessibility, or they're alluding to that fact. And once you get onto the sand, it's going to be difficult for anybody in a wheelchair or otherwise handicapped to use. So what's the need for it? That would be my question to the applicant, but since they're not here, they can't offer a rebuttal.
Well, there is a one paragraph explanation that basically, it says the proposed pathway as shown on the sketch will provide access from the basketball court area to the existing swings. 5-foot wide path will allow accessibility to the swings for mobility challenged students. So apparently it just simply means that the pathway is wide enough to push a wheelchair or use crutches or whatever might be needed.
Once you get to the end of the path,
You're in the
you're
court.
going to be in the sand, and you're not going to push a wheelchair very easily.
That's the,
I think.
So, I mean, the only point is that it's not like it's going to an area where you can...
Yeah, but I appreciate what you're saying, but there's accessibility to sandboxes and beaches all over the place. There's all kinds of ways to have mobility, people with mobility challenges to have access. They're just saying they want to make a path to give them access. It's 96 feet away from a wetland.
separated by manicured lawn.
I don't think it's an issue relative to wetlands. Don't get me wrong on that. I just find it somewhat odd to, on a relatively flat piece of land, to be concerned with accessibility issues.
Yeah, just
it doesn't seem like it fits.
I
If
think it just,
the kids are going to run around in the sand and play, they can walk over the grass.
Right. I mean, if this path we're talking about was looking for a waiver to be built within the 25, I think we'd be having a different discussion. The fact that it is, 96 feet away, it makes it barely jurisdictional. I mean, literally about 4 feet. And in that context, if it was somebody's garden or whatever, we would still let it happen, whether it made sense to us or not. It's something that wouldn't be any detriment to the wetland. So I think it's
not detrimental.
Yeah, and ADA is tough. It's a tough challenge. It speaks to reasonable accommodation. Sometimes I don't understand what reasonable is. And if it, in these folks' eyes, it means get them to the sand, and from there we can navigate that last 15 feet to the swings. I mean, you also have got to make sure there's a safe area underneath the swing. So, I think from an ADA perspective, it meets the intent, and I think from a wetlands perspective, it's fine too. So, I'm okay.
I agree with you. I think it's irrelevant. It's a path. It's 96 feet away, and it's a path. I don't care if they take elephants down the damn thing. It's a path 96 feet away. It's a small project. It's a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah, it's the project is of minimal impact, and I think it's consistent with the spirit of the small project bylaw, so I would be in favor of it as well, as a K.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to just be opportunistic, but the reality is, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be asking to find a way to navigate to the swings with the kids to just be able to get there, but some awful stretch of circumstances, some kids need help, and getting them to the edge of that sand is the best that we can do in this case, best that they can do, then so be it. And, anyway, enough.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll move it. I move that we consider NACC number 152 a small project under the town's wetland protection bylaw. That's my first motion, to consider it as a small project. As a letter K.
Second.
Are we still calling it the new form?
Yeah, this is the new form.
We haven't got rid of the old forms yet?
No, we only have the new form.
Good,
All right, so
good.
we don't distinguish it
That's
anymore.
excellent.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And my second motion would be to approve the small project NACC number 152 as proposed.
Second.
Rejected.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're all set.
Okay. So,
The next we have is a request for a determination of applicability for 29 Granville Lane.
I'm going to read. Thanks.
Are there any abutters present for this?
Well, it'll give me a chance to find the,
You need us to read it?
He's reading.
Pursuant to the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, and the North Andover Wetland Protection Bylaw, the North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass., for the filing of a request for determination of applicability by applicant Robert Lanigan to alter land at 29 Granville Lane, map 106C, parcel 50, North Andover, Massachusetts, for the purpose of replacement of a septic system within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetative wetland. Plans are available at the Conservation Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Napoli, Chairman.
Thank you, Jack. Okay.
Good evening. For the record, my name is John Moore, and I work for the Moore and Cameron Group. We're here tonight representing Robert Lanigan for a request for determination of applicability filed for his property located at 29 Granville Lane. The project is for the replacement of an existing septic system. It did have a Title V inspection, which it failed. What you see before you, Granville Lane's at the bottom of the page. The wetlands are located on the right side or the easterly side of the property, coming down, flowing down towards Granville. What you see is the 100-foot buffer pretty much encompasses the entire front yard. The existing leach bed and septic tanks are right out in the front. And the ideal position for this septic system would have been right next to the existing leaching field, which was where the proposed reserve area was on the original design plan. However, that would be within 100 feet of the wetlands. So we tested on the westerly side of the property. We have about 30 feet. We're able to get good soil tests over in that location, somewhat of a high water table. We're around 45 inches with the water table, but we had a good perk rate, less than 2 minutes an inch. But it does raise the system up, will require grading. We are fortunate enough we can maintain gravity system from the existing house. However, in order to comply with the current Board of Health regulations for 75 feet from wetlands to a septic tank, we are proposing to replace the tank, which is a smaller 1,000-gallon tank, which we propose to replace anyway. We're moving that 75 feet from the wetlands into the front yard. All work within the 100-foot buffer is within areas that are currently lawn, and they will be lawn afterwards. The only work within the buffer zone is actually the abandonment of the existing tank and the removal of the existing tank, redirecting the plumbing, the installation of the new tank, and the installation of the septic line heading towards the new leach field. The actual leach field itself is outside the 100-foot buffer. We do have some minor grading in the front. As I had mentioned, we do have a high water table, so we have to lift that grade up. So we do have some minor grading in the front yard, but that is all lawn currently. The proposed septic tank, as I had mentioned, would be 75 feet from the wetlands versus the existing tank is 61. The proposed leach field would be 101 feet from the wetlands. The existing field is 58. It will be obviously temporary alteration. This job should be done within a week and a half, 2 weeks. The site should be buttoned back up and stable, and it would loam and seed all the disturbed areas in the front yard. When Jennifer was out on the site, she did notice that there is a leaf pile down right adjacent to the wetlands. That's years of leaf debris. I did speak to our client about that, and he will have that removed. Most likely he'll have that done by, or he'll ask the contractor that will be doing the septic install if he'll be able to do that work. At this point, I'd like to open it up to questions from the commission.
No questions.
Joe?
Yeah, John, you're showing the approximate location of underground electric conduit. You know, depending on its actual location, there's likely to be, not likely, there's quite possibly a shift in one or the other. And what I'm understanding, based on the presentation, is the system has to stay where it's proposed. You potentially could have to move that underground conduit, which would, in essence, be within the buffer.
Exactly. Right now, part of that underground, we've actually got underground electric and Verizon on the other side. The septic's kind of stuck right in between the two. And you're exactly right. The septic's going to stay where it is, and we're going to have to move the other utilities however it be. The existing electric is in the buffer until it gets out towards the street. We might have to shift that a little bit at that bottom corner right on the edge of the buffer zone.
An activity like that serving private residents on an underground utility, does that still fall under the new exemption? Or is that more for the public utilities out in the street? They're all within pavement, right?
Right, all within pavement.
So this is something that if there's an envelope you want to work, to have available, talk about it tonight so we can condition it.
What's
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said was,
What it is an existing underground electric coming along. Based on DigSafe's location, it looks like we're not going to have to move it. But as Joe said, you never know.
I think the utility exemption applies to existing lines to houses too. I think the 10.02 ones are actually for new installations are exempt if they're within pavement, not maintenance of.
If this is a replacement in kind.
Yeah, maintenance.
It's kind of the tail wagging the dog. It's not maintaining the utility. I think the conduit would have to be moved because of this activity.
Right.
Right, so,
I think it's just safer to give yourself an extra 5-foot corridor
Right.
that might require you to work with them and be sure it's out of the work zone.
Yep.
Even though it's maybe 95 feet within the buffer zone, it's still separated by yard and driveway. I think it's the same project.
Right.
Just give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah, I think at least the Verizon one, you want to probably move it alongside the electric line. On the other side, on the opposite side of the field from where it is now. Because of, and they probably, if it's in between the field and the septic tank itself, somewhere in there, you probably, because then it might, probably ought to indicate where they're going to be on the, I don't think it's a big problem, but I think you have
Possible
to
to
get
just
them.
modify the proposed work to include the possible relocation of the utilities, or are you looking for like a revised plan?
I would say this is an RDA, I
Right.
would just include it in the proposed work.
Is a description within the proposed work.
Right.
And then one of the 3 conditions we would typically do in an RDA would be to allow that work.
Yep.
You know, erosion controls set outside of that work envelope.
And they already are, so.
But just a suggestion to move it along, maybe limit any necessary electric conduit relocation to be greater than 80 feet from the wetland. That puts it kind of outside, between the septic tank and the
Yeah, oh yeah,
leaching field,
yep, that would be perfect.
Okay,
so we could include that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
we list the proposed work in the introduction to the determination that we issue, we issue the form, but then we do a write-up, so we'll just include that in there.
Jackie,
No
any
questions. No.
I have no questions. Do I hear a motion? You should ask, do I have any questions from the audience? No?
What do we do with
I
that
just
one?
have one question. Is the sound on, because I'm having trouble hearing, the microphones?
Yep, they're wired to the room.
They're
They're
on?
all on, yep.
Your eyes are on, but is your room volume up?
I'll get up to 20.
Can you hear us any better now?
Yes.
You can now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. He did turn the volume up.
Sorry.
We have a producer back there.
The thought was he might make us look better, but jury's still out on that.
You're looking for a motion, right?
Yeah, looking for a motion.
All right, so I'll move that we grant the request for determination of applicability,
Negative number 3 and 6.
negative 3 and 6.
Yep, with conditions for pre-construction of inspection of the erosion controls, removal of the brush pile. I'm going to recommend wetland markers so that along that tree line, and then post-construction inspection.
And locating the utility removal.
Well, I think that's going to be in the project description.
That's gonna be the
not in the, as a condition.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No one opposed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next item is notice of intent, 242-1651 Old Salem Village. We have a recommendation for
So the
a request for a continuance.
good news is their as-built plan is done, so we should be getting some kind of request for compliance of the work that is complete shortly. I got that news today or yesterday, so.
And they did not need, well, they needed to or not, they did not move forward with any of the other construction activity that they wanted to.
No, they're only working outside jurisdiction right now.
Okay.
So the request is to continue to August 12th.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next item is notice of intent for Boxford Street, Messina Development Company.
Good evening. Philip Christensen here representing Messina Development.
Oh, we have to read this, Phil,
Okay.
sorry.
Is there a motion
I want to waive the reading.
to waive the reading?
We have to, are there any abutters here for this project?
Yeah.
If there are abutters, we have to read it. We can't waive it.
Here we go.
Pursuant to the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, and the North Andover Wetland Protection Bylaw, the North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass., for the filing of a notice of intent by applicant Messina Development Company, Incorporated, to alter land at Boxford Street, map 105C, parcel 22, for the purpose of construction of roadway entrance within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. Plans are available at the Conservation Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Napoli, Chairman.
Thank you, Jack.
So this is, you saw the proposal for the water line. This is the subdivision which that water line will serve. The majority of the subdivision is proposed outside of jurisdiction, so Phil will present to you the portion of the project that is in jurisdiction.
Yeah, just for some background for you, this is property that, if you probably remember from the water line, lies between Brookview Drive and Duncan Drive. Property's in here. It's a PRD subdivision. If you remember, we came to you with this property for an ANRAD to certify where the wetlands were. That was successfully completed, and what we did was to design the subdivision, the 7-lot subdivision, but everything up here, everything's outside the buffer zone of the wetland entirely. So what we have is there's a wetland across the street right here, so the entryway is within a 100-foot buffer zone of a wetland that's across Boxford Street. And just to blow up to make it easier, because it is such a little portion of the plan. Here's a 100-foot line. Boxford Street, this is the entrance, the construction entrance we're proposing. Hay bales, of course. And we'll bring that water line, which you've reviewed previously. The water line would come down through here. There will be an extension of a gas main in the street as well. And one catch basin, approximately, right here, will discharge to a low point down westerly on Boxford Street.
An existing basin?
No, we're proposing that basin.
Proposing, okay.
Right there. And the drain line here. Most of the work, except for that small portion of water at the bottom, everything else from the subdivision comes down into this detention pond infiltration basin, which is shown here with a discharge beyond 100 feet. So there's about, 4,000 square feet, I think, of disturbance in the buffer zone for this.
I walked the site with Lisa Eggleston yesterday, so she's been out and she'll be reviewing. She expects to have that. It's also in front of the planning board.
Yes.
For subdivision review. It is a PRD, correct?
It is.
So there's also open space, which is...
Yes, there's approximately 12 acres of open space, which is really, you see the property is outlined in blue, and there's PRD in red here, so all of this is open space.
It's also in priority habitat, so Natural Heritage will be commenting, both under the Wetlands Protection Act and under MISA, but you've already had your review with them, or...
And you were on site with us last spring, weren't you, when we walked?
Not
Oh,
with,
okay.
not when you were with Heritage.
Okay.
We actually, we got held up, or you guys got held up, waiting for the letter back from Natural Heritage.
We got that.
Right,
the
we've
next,
actually got it-
I think we got it the next day,
But was that specific to just the water line?
just to the water line.
Every filing is different, so. But Natural Heritage, just so you know about the rare and endangered species, the habitat, the overwintering habitat is to the south. Walking it with a gentleman, and Leddick, I believe his last name is, from Natural Heritage, he said this is a foraging habitat for the turtles, not overwintering habitat. And he was most pleased to find out at that time that since there are vernal pools here, and your regulations say you have to be 75 feet from vernal pools with any construction, he was pleased to hear that. And then since we've developed a subdivision without anything within 100 foot except this entranceway, he's pretty well satisfied. So I think there'll be a ruling of a no take from them, but still have to file with them.
And the town owns a piece to the sort of northeast, a piece of land. So are you proposing any trail access or any access to the open space?
We are not proposing any trails. We're not limiting that being done, but this is all open space right here.
Is that Foster Farm?
No.
No.
That's Brookview Estates.
Brookview.
Duncan Drive comes here, but this is all wetland. But this is upland through here, and there's upland here.
Almost Boxford.
almost box.
It could be almost like there could be a neighborhood trail, or is the proposal to give the land to the commission, or are you going to do a
We're not
land
going to
trust?
keep it, so
Okay.
if the town will accept
Under
it.
the PRD, that's typically how it would work. Eventually,
Right.
it would find its way here, but can I ask a couple of questions? The filing you have before us tonight is for roadway
The
and...
roadway, construction.
Roadway construction, stormwater is part of that? Like, in other words, you're not proposing, I noticed the lots are carved out, but you're not proposing any filings for construction at this time, just roadway?
He doesn't need any filings for construction.
They're non-jurisdictional?
Correct.
All of the lots, everything's,
So the lots
everything
are...
from that point up.
Okay.
Is outside the buffer zone,
Well-
including the stormwater.
Okay, so you're satisfied with the delineation with respect to...
We did an ANRAD on this last year or the year
Right, that's
before.
right, yep.
Yes.
No, you're right.
Yep, and so the lots have jurisdictional portions, but they're going to try to keep their erosion control on the upside of that 100-foot line. And usually, if a portion of the project is within jurisdiction for stormwater, they usually review the whole thing and,
Well, Lisa reviews the whole thing anyway.
right,
either
so
way,
it's kind of, we'll see the whole report and all that.
And we did submit everything to you as well,
Right.
so.
Okay, then I'll just, one real quick one here. With respect to the open space that's part of the PRD, access for the public, do you have an access point that you've thought about yet?
Yeah, I think if you came in here, you could come in on the roadway and walk right through here.
So will that...
It's out of the wetland.
You're going to work on that? Because the access points need to be called out and identified.
Okay.
We had two PRDs that took place in town that sounded great, and there's no identified access points. And when people access those properties now, the people that live there call the police, thinking there's something wrong
Yeah.
happening. So my recommendation would be to call it out now, or as your filing progresses, because if the lots are non-jurisdictional, then really, let's start designing the open space now.
Okay, we can do that.
To add to that point, if I could, Joe, and Doug, I think it probably makes sense to, just get it on paper, proposed trail location, just to plot it through that
I
open
think-
space. I don't think it would take much at all to do that, and...
Pretty heavily forested, so it'd be, if you put a trail location and it's down on paper, and then you go in and you start clearing it out, and you have 30-inch pine trees in the middle of the trail, not a good idea, I think. I think locating an access is a good idea. The trail, I think, it better, if you really wanted a trail, somebody's got to go out and figure out where the trail should be, and then you locate that on the plan.
If we're able to link this up to other open space, and let's say there's the opportunity to establish a series of access from point to point, Jack's, right, we gotta have a way to do it. I understand we're staying within the boundaries and staying out of
you
the
want
edge.
to be clear of your stormwater management structure, that's clear, so,
Yep. Treatment area. You have a stormwater treatment area on the left side,
Yep.
so, that's something you can work on, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a big issue, but, would you be, are there vernal pools out there in that open space that, would you be willing to,
Vernal pools within the wetland,
And now,
across the street wetland or back in the open space?
In the open
in the open space.
this open space that you have on the site, that the retention basin is on, within the open space, correct?
Yes.
Down here. Now, who's going to now, is this road going to be made a public way?
Yes.
Okay.
So Doug's asking the good point. Usually depending on what form the open space takes on in the end, whether it's a CR or something that requires legislative approval, the reality is, it's almost, my initial guess would be that stormwater management area can't be part of the open space. It need to be carved out under its own separate easement or lot or something,
I
and
think the rules allow it. I think it's actually referenced in the planning board zoning rules regarding PRDs. I'll double check that, but
well, again, not understanding if this comes in as a CR Why would, I guess if the state were involved, there are some activities that are prohibited within CRs.
Not if they're previously existing. I mean, Mollytown has its,
The way it's been done is the
Has
pass,
it-
the parcel's granted.
Well, yeah.
The title to the property
they're
is...
not, well, yeah, they're giving fee to the
The
commission.
other issue, is this something that if this is made a public way, is the town in a position where it's going to maintain that swale, that retention basin, or it's got, or has
Yes.
it,
Well,
they're willing to do that, or as I've heard in the past, they don't want to touch these things?
no, they don't want, that's not true. They, a lot of times don't want the LID. I don't think it's so much your traditional basin that they don't want. It's the,
What is an issue in which the homeowners will accept is, because this is LID project without curbing, going to have swales, the water will run down the swales along the roadway. Those swales are partly on the lots and partly within the right-of-way, so they'll be maintained by the homeowners, but not that. At least that's not our intention. And, you know, since it is a requirement that it be put in, and the requirement's put there by the town and the state, it always amazes me that the town doesn't want to take the responsibility for the stormwater management, so.
The other option would be to include the stormwater treatment area within the right-of-way of the road, so then it becomes owned by the
Well, that's easy enough to do, yeah. But I think it's allowed to be in the open space. I'll just check the section of the rules that apply to that. And if I'm wrong, we
Discussion
can...
was going on, and it came to me, I was trying to be very cautious to not even get into this discussion, because everything we're talking about is kind of putting the cart before the horse. What's before us tonight is the entranceway, and that catch basin and the drain from it, you know, the pipe from it, and nothing more.
No.
The discussion with regards to open space, what it looks like, the stormwater review and the size of the stormwater management area, and where it is and how it's conveyed, it's all planning board discussion.
Yeah, true, it's not before us.
But when it does come back full circle, if in fact the care and custody of the open space comes to the Conservation Commission, it only behooves us all to be involved in that discussion as early on, so when you get to the
Sure.
planning board. So I guess that's how it, even though it's not part of this filing, it's a germane discussion to have.
Okay.
Just a few more points on the trail access. I think as part of identifying that, it makes sense to identify a location for 2 cars to park near that trail access point. I think that's a good idea. It flows with these trail systems. It's a good point to put on the plan as well.
And I'll go back to Joe's comments a little bit on that, is that, you know, there aren't any requirements for open space to have trails. So what you're saying is a good suggestion, and we'll look at it, but it's not a requirement of the PRD process. So, and it's not a requirement of the Conservation Commission for the notice. So I understand where you're going with it, but you got to understand compliance with rules and regulations too, so.
It seems to me that if this is something that's going to, this isn't automatically going to become town property. The town has to accept it and agree.
Town has to accept it, yes.
So it seems to me at the time those discussions are brought forth, the commission will weigh in, and the issues that you raise can be brought at that point and made a condition. If you want us to accept it, you're going to have to do this, this, and that.
Right.
And that seems to me would be a reasonable way of handling it, especially if they seem to be reluctant about throwing all that stuff
it's
on
just-
the table at this point in time.
It's just, as Joe said before, you start to get off on tangents, and they're not that it's a bad thing to do, it's just that there's a certain structure we're working within. You know, we're looking for approval of construction down here within the buffer zone. That's what we're looking for. So,
You're not losing sight of the fact that whatever the conclusion of the planning board process is, there's going to be some offer of land for the open space coming back likely to the Conservation Commission.
Right.
And for us to say, well, we don't like it in its form, we certainly don't want you to have to go back to planning board or go back to the selectmen or whomever.
Right.
To flush those things out. I think, as this thing evolves now rather than later, it's the time to have those types of discussions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're hearing from us that, we're going to be talking to the planning board saying we're going to want trails, and we're going to want parking for 2 cars, and I'm not sure what else I heard at the table here.
The trailhead location.
Yeah.
And one more thing, would the applicant be willing to agree to open the property up for inspection to certify the vernal pools?
Yeah, once it's open space, you can do what you want with
Yeah,
it.
I guess it is, so that's sort of getting too far ahead, but we definitely want to do that.
And technically, too, vernal pools under the Wetlands Protection Act are different than vernal pools definition under the Endangered Species Regulations. So that a vernal pool under the Wetlands Protection Act is not within a wetland, it's within the floodplain of the wetland, because it was envisioned that everything within the wetland's protected. And then they thought, well, vernal pools are outside, so we're going to get the vernal pools in the floodplain. So if you read the wetlands regs, that's the vernal pools in the wetland regs. And then Natural Heritage comes along and they say, well, you can have a vernal pool inside a wetland as well. So,
Yeah, we deal with the wetland regs here.
right. So, anyway, yeah.
And then the
What-
bylaw deals with them completely differently, so it's,
Right. So once they're turned over to, once the town accepts it, they can certify all the vernal pools they want.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? No? Butters? Any questions from the butters? No? Hearing none. Is there a file number for this?
no. And, I mean, planning board is, Lisa are doing review, I don't think you,
No file
Yeah, and-
number, we can't close it.
Right, and planning board is off for 3 weeks, is it now?
we're off for 3 weeks too.
Okay,
June-
so-
August 12th is our next one.
Stormwater's being done too. How long do we have to wait for stormwater? Yeah, we have Lisa out there.
Lisa's going to have comments by next week.
Yeah.
Her initial comments, and then you'll have to respond.
She
Yeah.
actually
No
didn't
doubt,
think, I
so.
mean, this isn't overly complicated. I don't think she thought there was going to be a lot to,
Yeah, we tried to, but that LID does make it simple in a lot of
Well,
ways.
it sounded like, I heard one question that might become discussion, and that is the stormwater treatment area, the location of the stormwater treatment area. That could be, that's not etched in stone as far as I can tell.
right, I think the only thing that, when I was on site with Lisa, we saw all the test pitting for the septic system, so we didn't know if you had done any test pits for that area.
There were not.
Okay, so that, I'm sure that's going to be one of her comments.
We can get that done before the next meeting,
Now,
though.
Phil, you had made a quick statement about, the beauty of the LIDs is it simplifies
Yeah.
those types of things, and it does, a lot of ways, and the more we get sophisticated, the more we go back to the way things used to be, like old country drainage, which is what this looks like, on paper. But if we have a discussion like parking for 2 cars on the side of the road, that's right where your swale is. So it complicates
Yeah, it
that
does.
discussion.
Yeah.
Now suddenly it's not open ditch, and you got to find a way to traverse through that and protect it. And so it's going to complicate it as that discussion evolves.
By the way, when you look at the plans, you're going to see that there are catch basins in the roadway. That was a Gene Willis's suggestion, and the country drainage was fine with him, but he's afraid in the wintertime, when you plow the snow against the sides of the road, then the water starts running down, and instead of going in the swale, it's running down the street, and then it's going to all be on Boxford Street. So we've located extra catch basins in the roadway just for that purpose in the wintertime. And
But they're infiltrates
no, they're not. They're catch basins, and then they discharge into the swale.
into the swale.
Yeah. But, it's a good idea.
It's also a good first line of defense to get TSS out.
I suppose. We didn't count it for TSS removal, though. Okay.
But you're going to get 70% out.
Okay, we're going to have to continue the hearing.
Yep.
Do I hear a motion to continue?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 95 Old Cart Way.
doubt there's any abutters to this. If you want to waive the reading, you can ask. Any abutters for 95 Old Cart? So we'll waive the reading.
Waive the reading, yes. Because all we have is just this one
That's it,
page.
yep. So,
You didn't file a notice of intent?
this is a notice of intent, so I'll probably read my recommendation.
Before we even get to the recommendations, what about the checklist, the filing checklist for the notice of intent?
Oh, I don't give you all the paper anymore. We're going paperless, so I have a checklist, but
So you have
I'm
the
talking
actual
about-
filing as well?
I'm referring to, what does the checklist call for?
right, so he's requested waivers of plan requirements, which, again, this is let's back up a little bit. This started out as a violation. I was called to the site because the building inspector went because there was no building permit for a deck being constructed. When I went to the site, I pulled the file first. You, in 2007, had permitted a retaining wall and pool and a whole bunch of other things out here. That order was never recorded, and it was also never constructed. So I had a plan and a wetland line and everything for which Mr. Murtha started doing his new design on. When he filed, you know, he knew there were filing requirements. Rochelle went back out. She had delineated the property back in the day, and she came back out and redelineated. I had some issues when I went to look at that line. She and I went back out today and moved some flags. I now believe the line is in the correct spot. The plan you have has only the old wetland line on it. There is no new flagging on that wetland line. So we have old orders open, never recorded, not constructed. We have work in violation, and then we have this new plan. As I said, we also have requests for waivers of the 50-foot no-build zone and a request for waiver of plan requirements. So that's just to get started. Then you should probably talk to Mr. Murtha.
Before we even get started, I have questions, just
Oh,
based on
okay.
your presentation. I'm not ready to take any testimony. You referred to an order of conditions that was issued some years ago and not recorded?
Correct.
Issued to whom?
Mr. Murtha.
So you were the resident, he was the resident at the time? He's
Correct.
not somebody that bought the house and came into?
Correct.
This has been his situation? And when that order of conditions was issued and not recorded, was there a registered survey stamped plan?
Yes.
And where is that?
I have that, and those drawings are on that plan
Doesn't
currently.
matter where the old one is, because the reality is, the line has changed.
The line hasn't changed.
We moved, what, just two flags?
Well, no. The flags, when they were re-put out, were not, the old plan was, Rochelle doesn't have the old plan. She didn't have the old plan when she went out there. She hung her flags. I had some issues with two of the flags. So when she and I went out, we moved them back. I believe they're probably now in the location they were, if he had just
okay.
gone and resurveyed the old line. It's not like I moved them to some crazy location. I think they're probably...
The reason I asked about the original plan on the original order of conditions
Yeah.
is, could not that plan have been updated and used as a plan to put before us instead of the sketch that we have in front of us now?
I did do that.
Where is that?
I gave it,
It's what you're looking at.
no, it's on a full plan.
Oh, yeah, I have the full, again, we get 2 copies of everything. I send you everything via email, and if you can look at it there, or you can...
I'm struggling with, what I'm struggling with is this. I'll come right to the chase and tell you what my problem is, and then you guys can deal with it from there. At the end of the day, when we're done, the ultimate record of what we've done and what we've allowed and what has been completed on the site is on a recorded plan that's been stamped by an RPLS or an RPE. Without that, we have mayhem going forward when we try to figure out what happened on the
You're
site.
looking at me, and I advise people as to what they should do. What they give to you is not always following my recommendation. They can choose to do other things and request waivers, and you can choose to deny them. But
Okay.
this was not my recommendation to the applicant to do this.
Okay, I'm going to remain silent for a minute, let it go down the table, and then we'll have something to say.
Okay, let's talk about I need to better understand the history. So order of conditions for 2007 for work that shows on, not this plan, but a plan similar to this.
I don't want to misstate the applicant's, you should probably ask the questions of him. Since I wasn't here in 2007,
Oh, okay.
I'm just sort of giving you the
What
history
does our
as I
record,
know
what does
it.
our record show?
We were.
Right, you were. You want to see the record plan from 2007?
Well, let's not get into that kind of detail. My
Okay.
question is more general for us. So there was an order of conditions issued for a project that was proposed in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was recorded or not, I mean, I guess technically it's a violation, but if no work took place, then I guess it's not egregious violation. But in 2007 and 2015, they were 8 years beyond. It's not subject to any permit extension delays, right?
No.
The Sun has said on that.
It's an invalid order of
So
conditions.
it's invalid, so it's not like we can get a modification, so we're looking at a brand-new filing.
Correct.
So even using, I think we're only talking about a matter of economies of of hiring a surveyor, using the former surveyor who may or may not be willing to modify his plan to show the current project, we would have to get a new plan from a new surveyor.
Correct.
So, I don't know if this plan was modified by Mr. Giles or was modified by the applicant. I just don't know what we have. But more importantly is, this is my 24th year on the commission. I can never remember waiving the plan requirement as part of our filing regulations. I can never remember it. And you've been here longer than me.
In fact, recently, within the past year, there was something that came in front of us that was a modified, non-stamped plan, which I remember making a lot of noise about. It looked like somebody took some crayons and colored in a bunch of stuff.
I informed the applicant that you have never granted waivers of these requirements.
So I guess that's where we're going. It's just
The
unlikely.
applicant's there, though. You guys keep talking to me.
Well, I think
applicant.
you can hear us. I'm only one vote, but I'm not in favor of granting a waiver to the plan requirement. I'm opposed to it, for all the reasons I stated. I don't know what the rest of the guys are going to do, but
I will absolutely echo that. And without a plan, we don't have an application before us.
We don't have an application that's been filed. There is no
Because you
application
requested a
before
waiver.
us.
You can deny him the application.
how many waivers have been requested?
I believe 2.
One, the first waiver
The plan.
is relief from the plan requirement.
And the second was of the no-build zone.
The second one's a presumption until we get the
Right,
survey
yeah,
plan.
the no-build zone's irrelevant without a
Correct.
plan.
Here is the, I only have one copy here, John. What happened to the other copy?
Okay, so this is the waiver request form filled out on July 10th, 2015 by the applicant, Mr. Murda, 95 Old Cart Way. He's requesting a waiver from the 50-foot setback for the no-build zone, which we can't determine, in my opinion, because we don't have a stamped plan before us.
Did you give them copies of the narrative?
So let's
and
let's just,
So I just wanted to pass the request form down the table, so.
I don't want to mislead, I don't want to create, a turbulence here that sends an applicant back only to hire a surveyor, only to come in with this request to seek a waiver. If the waiver is to build a stairway to a lower deck and put a jacuzzi on the lower deck, and that is within some distance, as close as a little bit more than 25-foot no disturb, not, in other words, almost entirely in the no-build zone, I could say, don't even bother hiring a surveyor, I'm not going to approve
This is the
it.
original plan that was approved.
Yeah.
There is no jacuzzi shown.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to mislead the
So
applicant.
this is completely different.
I don't want to get caught up in the fact that we're sending him to get a surveyor, only to have us deny it in the future. if this is what's being proposed,
Still another is.
I have no intention of approving.
Well, not approving, but it's already there.
Take it out. It's a
Okay.
violation.
Well, we could,
No building permit, no conservation permit. Well, I mean, that's what happens. That's why there's a permit process. We're not the bad guy here,
Am I allowed to speak, sir?
eventually. But we're trying to give you guidance. You know, it's not just about hiring a surveyor to get a proper plan. It's that when you come in with a plan, if your proposal is to leave this where it is currently shown and where it currently is, I can tell you I'm going to vote against it. It's not approvable. That's my take on it.
I have to agree.
And, you know, I'm not sending you out to hire a $3,000 surveyor or a $2,000 surveyor or to negotiate with Mr. Giles to see if he'll modify his plan. I'm saying if you do any of those and you come back with this proposal, I don't like it. It's not gonna be approved by me.
In order to...
I'm one vote.
In order to have a waiver considered, in order for us to consider a waiver request, and we consider them routinely, the burden is upon you to demonstrate to us that there is no viable or feasible alternative, that you have nowhere else in the world you can go with what you want. Absent any viable and feasible alternative, we would then consider a waiver. Based on what information we have in front of us now, you're not there, even without your required plan.
There's some historical information that I think might be relevant, though.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the applicant wants to testify. You all set?
Yeah, if you wish to say something, yes.
I just wanted to give, these are Google Earth photographs. They're not as clear as I'd like. They're clearer if you go on the site itself.
I provided historical aerials as well.
The
Photography of the site.
There's clearly a stone dust pad in the no-build zone previously.
No disturbance, meaning yard work and landscaping and things of that sort, as opposed to a structure, are two different animals. No
Right.
build speaks to the structure, and this is the structure. That's why the building inspector was concerned with it.
building inspector, there's a letter from the building inspector in there, and the deck actually did not require a building permit because it's below a certain height that does not require that, and the stairway simply connects the upper and lower decks.
Oh, no, he didn't say that. The building inspector said the deck didn't require he told me everything required a building permit. He said it didn't violate any zoning, was the only
The
thing.
lower deck that's in the no-build zone wouldn't require a building permit.
Let's not get involved in the building inspector's jurisdiction. I mean, the reality is, because the building inspector went out there on a call, it's been brought to our attention that there is a violation to the Wetlands Protection Act and to our bylaw. And this is the process that's before us tonight, and you know, looking for the waiver of a plan and then ultimately permission to build this deck. And I'm saying, you know, even with the plan, my position would be to, you know, put the deck 50 feet, you know, outside of the wetland area. In other words, outside the no disturb, which is very different than what's proposed.
The home was constructed in 1995, and that boulder wall was constructed at that time, and the crushed stone patio as well was designed and constructed as part of the original plan and construction of the home. It'd been in use, continuous use since then. I've put all kinds of structures up there, including, and you can see on, not so clearly on those printed photographs, but if you go on Google Earth, you can see there's a rectangular pool. I want to say it was 2007. The printing quality I have to apologize for, but if you go on there.
Pool in any of the aerial photographs. Someone may have put a hot tub out there at one point.
I just, you know, I sat on this
There's no
commission in
pool.
1995, as did Al, and you might have too, right? 95. And I remember this original application, so I would know that the order of conditions issued against the house would have been
But
clear about the no disturbance zone.
Right.
and that it be maintained. So anything that happened from the time the house was built up until it was discovered, historically by photograph, all you're proven is a consistent and prolonged history of violations.
I don't think
But
the stone
you
does
approved
tap.
the 2007, you approved the plan, made no mention of this area being a pre-existing disturbed area.
It can be disturbed. The 50-foot no-build zone can be disturbed. You just can't
But
have a structure
the
in it.
wetland bylaws were not enacted until 1998, which was after this had been constructed. And that,
So that's what I'm saying. The
Not yet, they
stone-
were fortified. The 2550s were always in place prior to that.
Yeah, it seems to me that you have a notice of intent, I guess it was when the house was built.
When the subdivision was built, there's no 2550 on the plan
Okay,
back in the day.
but there was, well, when was this plan prepared?
2007, I believe.
2007, an order of conditions issued in 2007? Okay, for what's shown on this plan.
Yeah.
So that order of conditions was issued, but all the work was never completed. Some of it may have been,
yeah,
but
it
not
was
all of it.
actually, ownership did change.
But no work was done. And that order has lapsed.
The order was issued to you.
Right. I was married at the time. I went through a divorce, and I had,
The work was not done, or was partially done, or what? The work was not done,
work was not done.
and the order has lapsed.
It was started, I mean, there was clearing that was done.
The order was never recorded, so no clearing should have been done. No bond was posted, nothing happened.
That's true, but the thing is, the order is no longer in effect. Is that correct?
Correct.
So
There's
there is
also
no
clearing in
order.
the
There was
25.
work started, which the building inspector called our attention to, which would require an order of conditions to do. And so there is no order of conditions. If anything, this is subject to a enforcement order, if the board would choose to issue one. But at this time, you wish to do certain work, and you want to come in, and you need to file a notice of intent that clearly describes what it is you're doing and shows where everything is, a plan similar to this with the new work that you're proposing to do. And part of that work is going to be within the no-disturb zone, not no-disturb zone, but within the no-build zone.
He's already done work.
I know, he's already started some of the
already
work.
done
That's the enforcement order.
Okay, enforcement order is issued. So the point is, you need to file a notice of intent.
It has been issued, we're waiting for us to vote on it.
I intend to.
To ratify it, but it's issued.
And at this time, you're bringing before us that order of conditions, that notice of intent you will file will require, for you to complete what you want to do, will require a waiver of the 50-foot no-build zone.
That's
that
what he
correct?
submitted. He submitted his waiver request.
Okay, he's got to,
But
But Joe said it earlier, and I want to absolutely agree with him. Don't waste your time and money on a survey if you're going to come in and ask for a waiver to put the deck up where you're putting it now. There's at least two of us here that won't vote for it. You don't have, you have alternatives that you can take here. You can get your deck without a waiver, and you're asking for a waiver because that's what you want, but it's not that it's your last option. As I said, the burden's on you to prove that, but, I mean, I wouldn't waste $3,000 or $4,000 on a survey plan and the application.
Even if we've been using the property for 20 years in that area, and it was built to be used for that purpose.
you seem to have some confusion of the difference
The
between no
answer is yes,
disturb.
yes.
Well,
Even if he's been using it, it's not like, it's not like.
but not for a structure.
Yeah, but hold on, it's not like adverse possession, where you openly and notoriously possess property and eventually take title to it because. This is a different situation. There's a different point of law on this. You haven't been in violation, you're openly in violation. I'm sorry, I take that back. You're covertly in violation that was discovered by a building inspector and reported to us.
The stone dust pad was not a violation. It was just.
That's
We're not-
the
we're not
distinction I
talking-
was trying to make.
Structure.
We're not talking about a stone
The
dust
way
pad.
the yard has been used historically, and at least up until 2007, when apparently there wasn't a violation, and even what was proposed in 2007, all of the structures are outside of the 50. So it's, even by virtue of saying, show me an alternatives analysis and we might consider, I'm saying, the 2007 plan is an alternatives analysis. There's a reasonable alternative. You can't pass muster and get this waiver. It's unwaivable, the way I see it. And in the use of the property, nobody's suggesting that the use of the disturbed area within the no build is an issue. It's certainly allowed.
Yep.
Putting the structure is the violation, and that's what we're up against now.
It appears that putting this four-season jacuzzi where you're proposing to put it, or where you already have it placed, is not something that this board is going to grant a waiver for. It doesn't appear that way. Okay, if you were asked for that tonight, the motion would not pass, okay, because there are 2 votes that people have indicated they'd vote against it. Okay? There may be more. There is other locations on the site that are outside the 50-foot, between the 50 and the 100, where you could locate this four-season jacuzzi. You're proposing actually to have 2 jacuzzis on the site. Now, you could make the other jacuzzi, you got the four-season jacuzzi, and have 1 jacuzzi on the site. You know, that's your decision. Or you can have the 2, but locate the four-season one outside the 50-foot. There is room to do that. You may want to redesign this a little bit to accomplish that, but there's room to do it.
Had I known that the prior permit had lapsed and was no longer effective, I would not have started construction. I thought I had till the end of this year.
This is a permit you took out.
Yes,
Is this correct?
yes.
And you received the order of conditions.
I-
Okay, and it did not
expired
get
the
filed.
January of this year, as I understand
The order of conditions is
it.
clear as to how long it lasts.
Expired 3 years ago. 3 years ago.
It's only a 3-year.
Oh, 5 years ago.
He extended it for 1 year beyond that,
So, yeah,
so it was 2000,
It was
it-
extended
but
for
I was
1 year beyond it.
told that there was a,
he got caught.
Did he get caught in
2000
the automatic extension?
No, it was 2010. It was due to expire January of 2011, which caught him in the Permanent Extension Act, 2008 to 2012. So he got 4 more years. So it did expire January of this year. It doesn't matter. This deck was never on the old plan.
Because of the state law.
Right.
So it's
Expired
an extension.
January of this year.
I thought it was December of this year.
Unfortunately, you're out of luck.
Not
To
to,
that
I mean, I don't mean to pile on, and I certainly, I hope it's not interpreted that way. I think what you want to do, with the exception of that deck inside the 50-foot no-build zone, is buildable. You have an old order of condition, an old record plan, an order of conditions that defines an area that you can work. It looks like that's most of your project, except for those stairs and deck leading out to that four-season jacuzzi. That's going to have to move. There's no leeway on that. That waiver won't be granted here. And, you know, as far as the plans go, what usually works with us, and I think with other conservation commissions, is that you figure out what you want to do, and I think you have a pretty good idea what you want to do. You work with our staff and your engineer to design a plan that is going to make it, that's going to be approved. And when you come here, it gets approved if you do what they say.
I did it in 2007. I certainly would have done it now if I thought I was in violation of anything.
So I think you know what you've got to do now.
One thing, in the original plan that was approved in 2007, and it got extended, you know, and ended this past January, did not include this four-season jacuzzi where it's,
Honestly, I
where you
didn't think it
located.
had to be that
So
specific.
that was in violation of the order as it stood. So at that point, you should have at least, if you knew you wanted to do it, you should have come to the commission and say, hey, how can I modify my order to include this?
What about the
But
old
it
order?
didn't happen.
Did you address that in the enforcement?
I believed I had a permission to put a jacuzzi in. I didn't realize it was that site-specific within the plan, and we've been using this area since the house was built. You know, it was hard for me to imagine that boulder wall that was constructed
You didn't read the order. You have never read that thing, because it is so darn specific. It's incredible. It's never been read. There are so many things in there that you have violated. It's from recording the order, to installing erosion controls, to hiring a monitor, to calling, I mean, it specifically says in there, any changes to the plan must be reported to the Conservation Commission. This is, I've really had it with this project.
At this point, we have 3 options. Actually, we have 4 options. And the last option's not really even one at all. Option 1 is to take the application on and deny the waiver on the plan
We don't
filing.
even have a DEP file number, so we can't even deny it at this point.
I mean,
Allow him to continue in order to complete his application. We can await the DEP number, close, and make a decision based on lack of information that we have. And then lastly, would be to allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice, but that only allows us to, you know, hold his filing fee for a future application, but we can do nothing about the DEP filing fee.
However, there
is no notice of intent filing. You haven't submitted a notice of intent to us or
Yes,
to
he
the...
has.
Oh, yes, he
Yeah,
has.
he has.
We just read it.
That's why we've got waivers, we have to move on.
The filing's been made.
So we've got, what he did, he's got a filing in front of us, and he's got a waiver request attached. We have to take action on his waiver request first, because the waiver request,
Okay, you can't close the hearing, certainly.
no, but we have to take action on the waiver request. That's before us tonight. We have to take action on the waiver request, and then we can give this gentleman some options.
Can I withdraw the request for a waiver?
You can.
I'd like to get an engineer to do a proper plan so that
What I was
it's
going to
done
recommend
right
to you,
and-
That simplifies it.
I was going to recommend that you withdraw your application without prejudice. And
I just asked that, because I'm going to have to move this, and the landscape has to be, you know,
Yeah.
all the terrain has to be changed that I'd be given a little leeway here to allow it to remain where it is until I can get it moved.
there's an enforcement order that Jen has prepared for you that gives you until, I believe, July 31st.
Well, I think that was to get a filing to
To-
us, which
to-
he's
to-
done. So he's filing. I don't think he should withdraw, because he's done his public
I
notice.
think we should continue, allow him to submit
And
additional
then-
information.
Right, he needs to
Continue,
submit
you can
additional.
modify, you can do
That'll
whatever you...
give you a chance to talk to the engineer, get a plan to us, it doesn't, you can provide the additional plan, or the new plan to DEP without having to confuse them about a new filing or a modified filing.
I don't want to confuse us all,
I
but
think you continue it and give him that time.
he's going to have to withdraw the request for waiver, or we have to take action.
We don't have to take action tonight. If he submits a new plan, he can withdraw the waiver when he submits a new plan. He can maybe not need a waiver at that point. We don't have to act on anything, because he doesn't even have a DEP file number at this point.
Okay,
We can vote on the waiver. I'm
I
fine
don't
with
like,
that.
I don't like seeing it floating out there.
Okay.
It's
we
like
can-
having
we
a
can-
ghost.
We can vote on the waiver.
So if you want to continue everything till the next
I
hearing...
think we need a couple things. We can vote on the waiver, we need to ratify the enforcement order, and we need, he's gonna have to close out his old order. He has an open order.
Okay, so the first thing, would you like us to continue your current notice of intent application, the one that you've, right now, with this plan? Would you like to continue that so you can
Yes.
work on it and bring it back? All right, so why don't we start there? So I'll move that we continue 95 Old Cartway, no DEP number, to our next meeting to give the applicant an opportunity to amend his application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so that would negate the need to vote on the waiver, on the waiver if we're continuing.
Future concern.
Now, what about, do you want the notice of, the enforcement order to be ratified now?
Sure. I mean, I already issued it, so it's just.
But we
you
need
can-
to, we need to take action on that, right?
Yep.
So I would move that we ratify the enforcement order
And you took that back, Jen?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
We can sign
Second.
it at the end.
that was issued for 95.
Motion and a second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So each action just puts you where you are now, but gives you time to come back. And my humble opinion, for what it's worth, it's free advice, so it's not worth much. When you choose to have someone to do your work for you, have them communicate with Jen before they stamp a final plan and come in before us. You might still be able to get what you want without needing a waiver.
Okay, thank you. Am I to be given something tonight, or?
Nope, nothing.
And you need guidance on the open order, because we did make reference to the fact that we have to close the open order. So
Right.
before the hearing can move forward, he has to have a request.
So the old order needs to be recorded, and then it needs to be a request for certificate of compliance.
No work.
Right, as an invalid order of conditions.
We can't close that out without recording.
You can't take on a new public hearing on a lot that already has an open order of conditions.
So he's
It
got,
has to be recorded first, and then request to be.
so we'll vote that out when he comes in next then. So that's the only thing you have to do between now and then is.
You need to talk to Jen to find out how to procedurally do that, so you can do that when you're at the next meeting. We have to take that step first.
Okay,
That was it.
we'll get that done, yep.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
David, I have your slides to present, so I can, those we can put up. This is the request for an amendment.
Well, before we
Two
start,
continuances?
with West Mill, we have two requests for continuance for Royal Crest, 242-1634 and 242-1635. Do I hear a motion?
Move to continue until the August 26th meeting.
Second.
August
The
12th.
It says on the agenda, request and continue to the 26th.
No, it says to the 12th.
No, he requested a month?
Yeah, it's a month.
I'm looking at the agenda.
The agenda says 26.
Oh, okay, then the 26th is fine.
Says to the 12th.
He just emailed today, and I was out of the office, so I didn't see it. So I put the 12th,
My motion stands.
to go to the 26th.
Second.
Wait a minute, no motion.
Joe and Jack.
Okay, the 26th. Do we have a second for that?
Jack seconded it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we have an amendment request for 242-1629 for West High Street, West Mill property.
Here's the, do you want to read this, or? No, it's an amendment. It's a new public hearing.
Pursuant to the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended, and the North Andover Wetland Protection Bylaw, the North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass., for the filing of a notice of intent by applicant RCG West Mills, N.A., LLC, to alter land at 4W High Street, map 54, parcel 0001, for the purpose of amending the order of conditions issued under DEP file 242-1629, including relocation of parking and stormwater management structures and demolition of building number 37, portions of which are within bordering land subject to flooding, and the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and inland bank. Plans are available at the Conservation Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Napoli, Chairman.
Needed a wetland degree to read that one.
Okay.
Okay, I'm David Steinberg from RCG LLC, representing the applicant. I'm here with John Ford from Horsley Witten, who's the professional engineer. We're back before you now asking for an amendment. We previously were here in January, I think it was, where we put forth and got an order of conditions for the demolition of part of one of the buildings on the West Mill site, building number 37, the construction of parking lot and certain landscaped areas and related activity. Since we received that, we came across some engineering challenges as we got into further exploration on the site, including some soils, some geotechnical testing beneath the slab, and some further examination of the slab of the existing building. In the prior plan, the idea was to protect the two 60-inch culverts carrying the Cochituwick Brook through the site that was underneath the slab and spanned by the slab. And it turned out the slab could not sufficiently support vehicular traffic as we had thought before. And there are some different conditions of the slab as we move through the site. But generally, what we did when we found out this information is we decided to, instead of doing any further structural work to try to span the culvert, avoid the culvert altogether, pull out the slab, use that area as a drainage area through the center of the site. So if you can go to the next slide, Jennifer. The new plan has moved all parking and drives out of the middle of the site, as you see it there. So you can see a green space going down pretty much symmetrically between the existing buildings now. That has allowed us to avoid crossing the culvert except in a couple specific areas where there is sufficient structure. Has allowed us to actually simplify our stormwater management in a lot of ways. John Ford can take you through some of those specifics. And at the same time, as we were addressing getting out of the way of the culvert and we think improving upon actually stormwater management, giving us some more leeway in the construction there and some more capacity to deal with stormwater down the middle of the site. We also determined it was more practical to demolish the remainder of Building 37, which, if you're following from High Street up through the center lot and then you take a right, we'd completely remove the remainder of the manufacturing building that was built in the 1990s. And for the time being, just grade that land, seed it, let grass grow until we determine further what we're going to do with our master plan and potentially develop that part of the site. If you can go to the next slide, Jennifer, thank you. In particular, we've highlighted a few of the modifications that are part of this amendment. We can walk through those sequentially. The culverts currently run essentially between the 1 and the 3 that are indicated there, where the culverts then outlet and then go into Osgood Pond from there. Number 2 is highlighting just some of the changes in the parking and circulation there. Number 4 is highlighting the building we're going to demolish. And I think as we go into the next slides, John can take you through the specifics of the modification.
For the record, Jonathan Ford, civil engineer with the Horsley Witten Group. Jennifer, if you could move to the next one, we'll kind of zoom in on the specifics. So in addition to maintaining the existing twin culverts, we've also adjusted the design to remove the entirety of the existing slab, which improves our stormwater management in addition to further reducing impervious area by increasing the green space in the center of the site. We've also adjusted our bioretention system design to remove the impermeable liners, which allows for increased infiltration. So essentially, the stormwater management design is very similar. Bioretention systems distributed through the site for now providing increased infiltration, further reducing impervious area when compared to the design that was part of the original order of conditions. If you could move on. So showing the center permeable drainage swale there with the parking bays moved north and south to right and left on the page here. So the systems are essentially quite similar. Bioretention systems filtering stormwater runoff in the center, overflowing to that drainage swale and further infiltrating. Next slide. Do you want to talk about circulation, Dave? Essentially, The circulation is around the perimeter of the site, shown with the blue lines. This is the previous design, which had parking through the center of the site. If you go to the next slide, Jennifer. The primary change is that we've consolidated vehicular circulation on both sides. They're no longer really designed as streets. They're dual parking bays on either side. We're showing at the top of the page there, you can see the green line, a proposed wooden deck over the existing bridge, which is to be the existing concrete bridge, which is to remain over the daylight point for the culverts, which would provide a place for folks to get across the site. Cross-section through the center of the swale, looking from left to right on the page, from south to north. You can see the existing culverts. The grade is still stepping down. The existing building on the left side of the page to the south is about 6 feet higher than the existing buildings to the right side. So looking at how those will terrace, pitching into the bioretention systems on the left side, which then filter down. You can see pitching from the right side of the page to bioretention systems on the right side of the north side of the site. So the existing bridge, as I mentioned before, proposed to remain for vehicular loads. That's that yellow arrow in the darker hashed section of the bridge, maintaining that for circulation. The lightweight bridge mentioned before, the blue arrow is the portion that's to remain with the wooden deck over it. And Jennifer, if you could move on. And I think you can go one further. So I think you want to discuss the building 37 specifically and changes there.
In this case where we previously proposed to take down essentially half of building 37, what we found it was quite challenging to keep the rest of it intact because we were kicking ourselves into certain seismic and building code compliance and essentially building a new building for a building we thought was obsolete and was making construction of the center lot a little more difficult as far as staging and making grades and making it work with the existing building. So as we looked further at improving our design, we decided it was more practical to take the rest of that building down at this time, leave it as open space, and for the time being improve or dramatically increase, in this case, the pervious areas of the site until we have further plans for what will happen on that part of the site, and I think will be nice open space and staging space for us as we complete the project well out of the buffer there of Osgood Pond. So we can go to the next one, Jennifer.
Can we say that slide for just a second?
Yep.
Just so it's the rectangular left-hand side and lower portion, irregular top and right side. So that's the
Yep.
building itself?
Yeah, there's...
What are those other two lines I'm looking at that are kind of traversing through with the building area? It's a dashed, triple dotted line.
That's the 100-foot buffer zone.
That's 100
That's
foot.
the 100-foot.
Right, so I had mentioned to them when they take that building down on reconstruction, there's a very small portion of it in the 50 that you would probably, upon reconstruction, want to see them stay out of the 50.
So that was exactly my question, because I thought at first that might be the 50.
No, it's not.
Okay. But it's that other corner up top that wouldn't be allowed to go back?
Right.
Okay. So in demolishing it, in grading it, and would you refer to it as staging area?
Yeah,
that
so-
activity needs to be better defined for us, of what it is.
Yeah, so, well, upon completion of the project, it will be a grass area. It'll be seeded loam through there. During construction, it allows us to basically stay more clear of the pond and have more area to work to be pulling down the buildings and doing the construction work. So when we're done, it'll look like essentially a grass field.
I didn't mean to get into the question, I just, the line of the demolition, I mean, everything I heard so far seemed to be a net improvement. Demolition of building was far more esoteric, didn't know what it was being proposed here.
Okay, so we move to the next slide, Jennifer. I think it just shows what it's going to be when we're done. There is a portion of that building, so if you look in the upper right-hand corner, the light outline of a, I guess it's sort of a trapezoid, maybe some other kind of shape. There is a what we call a shed there. It doesn't actually have a roof on it, where the existing cooling tower that serves the old Converse campus, buildings 14 and 36, is housed along with a generator, certain electrical infrastructure, and that stuff is likely to remain there, or is going to have to remain there through this project. So that one area, we'd like to keep the walls surrounding those and enclosing them just to buffer them for the effects of sound and security. But that's all, again, outside the 100-foot buffer there. Okay, and I think that covered the broad strokes of the plan.
So Lisa did re-review the stormwater design, and I had emailed you her letter. I don't know if Donna made you a copy, but she had a few concerns at the end. There was some plan note that needed to be revised, and she did have some comments that pond, that detention pond that's to the right of the building, is actually a jurisdictional wetland because it's been there for so long. It predates the date that gets the exemption, which I think is 1996. So you could take jurisdiction over it. It is clearly constructed, but it does have a direct connection to the pond. So she noted that, and it is kind of flagged, but we didn't give it any buffer zone or anything per se. But the fact that things probably live in it at this point was probably the only highlight that it has. But they're not proposing to touch it at this point, and any future development would require stormwater design anyway, so we could talk about it then for sure.
Any questions, Al?
No questions from me.
Joe?
And I apologize if I had missed earlier meetings as we ramped up to this. I mean, substantial changes from an order of conditions issued in February. I mean, does this rise above an amendment, or is this truly a fair game amendment?
Yeah, the project's still the same. They've just reoriented it. I mean, it's still the same project. I mean, I guess you could say the demolition is actually an improvement, not a...
That's why you paused on that slide, because I wasn't sure if it was improvement or not. I mean,
Well, I mean, it's going to be grass for now, and anything they come back with would have to be another
future filing.
discussion.
Yeah.
Jack?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, just some comments. I can understand why it has changed this much, and I think the amendment is the right way to go. I think this is exactly how we should be doing it. Just to be clear, is there a vehicle pathway right up by the, right at the end of the culverts to the west of the site?
Yes.
Is that the west? Okay.
So that circulation, where you see the gray, all those gray areas are connecting vehicular loop,
That's vehicular,
essentially
okay.
through the site. And that was built as a reinforced concrete bridge to carry truckloads there. So that we were keeping as the circulation.
So you can get from one side to the other
Right.
up against the pond area, okay.
It's currently used for truck traffic now.
Right, I know, okay. And I did read Lisa's report, and it was overall acceptable. I don't remember what the concerns were. I thought they were fairly small, though. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I have them here. One was something to change about the plan specifically.
Yeah, I think Horsley Witten resubmitted the one.
We resubmitted a plan that provided additional detail, essentially. And there was one note that was inconsistent, that on the demo plan, it didn't call out the cooling tower to remain, but it is clearly called out on every other sheet. As Jennifer mentioned, the note regarding the existing detention basin.
It was just a note. She somewhat worried about hydrology to it, but the same area will drain to it. There's a roof leader that goes in there now, and there will continue to be a roof leader from building 36, is it? I can't see from here. Or, yeah, isn't there, there's,
Well, she mentioned the cooling tower area to remain, and we're also proposing grading the resulting grass area to still pitch to the detention basin with an undergreen to maintain the existing hydrology as closely as possible, but noting that the resource area of concern is Osgood Pond.
wasn't anything.
Sean?
No questions.
One quick one.
Do for buttons, too.
Just the order of conditions that we issued originally, did we call, that order call for water testing? Am I thinking of the?
No, you're thinking of the pond across the street.
I'm thinking different, okay. I'm in the right neighborhood with the wrong pond?
Wrong pond.
Us. I'll say.
Okay, now, do we have anybody in the audience that wishes to address the board?
And they actually, you have a copy of their letter in your file.
Mr. Pennington here?
My name is Roger.
If you could just come up to the mics, or any mic is fine. Please just note that noise issues are not the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction.
I'm sorry.
Any issues like noise or that sort of thing are not we only relate to wetlands issues.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
My main concern is the Osgood Pond, which appears at the top of your map. And the concern is that that pond has been degraded over the last few years to the point where if nothing is done to protect it, we'll have a swamp, and we're headed that way now. And I've been resident next to the Stearns, who share with us the granite building that sits to the right of the pond. When I moved in 2004, the turtles would come up and to within 30 feet of our deck and frolic and have their mating sessions. Now, that whole area is overgrown with just various invasive species, and it's probably 80 feet from our deck now to the water. And the depth of the water has been degraded seriously from silt that has flowed through from the Schneider Electric entrance to the pond. So there's a huge deterioration, and George Stern and I called attention to this situation back in 2010. We wrote a letter to the Sutton Pond Condominium Board of Trustees regarding our concerns about this pond. To date, nothing has been done. It looks to me from looking at these plans, we're not going to have a huge increase in cars parked where building 37 now exists. So I'm very concerned about further pollution, contamination of the Osgood Pond water. And also, I know the invasive species have come from the East Mill Pond on the other side and have pretty much choked the life out of the Osgood Pond. So those are basically the concerns that we have.
I don't think the invasives move from one pond to the other. They're just in both ponds, all of their own accord.
Well, the silt, though, that has come down has made the Osgood Pond a lot shallower than it used to be. And in some amount of time, I'd say within the next few years, we'll just have a very narrow stream. And not much, it'll be a swamp. It won't be a pond. And the big concern that we have is that is an historic mill pond, and needs to be preserved as part of the heritage of North Andover. So,
Are we talking about the Sutton Pond now?
talking about Osgood Pond.
Osgood Pond. Who owns?
Sutton Pond, I believe, is the pond below the Osgood Dam.
I believe,
So,
Right behind here.
so Osgood is upstream?
so we have the East Mill Pond
Yeah.
on the East Mill
Yeah.
campus.
Yeah.
Then we have the building that we're talking about is on Osgood Pond.
Yeah.
And then below the Sutton Pond condominiums is Sutton Pond, when you go over the dam and down that way.
So occasionally, and I'm just looking to educate myself here, occasionally we have applicants that come before us for various different ponds in town to do activities like take weeds out or whatever. Whose responsibility is it, if anybody's, to do any maintenance on any pond anywhere? Or is it my understanding that we leave them alone?
It's the owner of the pond. So on the East Mill Pond, this same
Yeah,
property group is doing work on their pond.
yeah.
They don't own this pond, although they do own a portion of the bank and some of the pond, and there they are mitigating all the invasives. There's a mitigation plan and a replanting plan on their portion of the property.
Is there a point source somewhere, or is this just?
No,
things that-
I think we found out when the Congregational Church had the oil tank leak, that actually the town's drainage comes into the pond. And then there's the campus, which, obviously the stormwater management is meant to improve the situation on that, provide more filtration and better. I think as part of this proposal, the old pump is not going to be used anymore, the old pump system.
The old pump system was inspected.
Yep.
At the end of last year, and it's proposed to be continued use.
Oh, continued
and
use.
upgraded. One of the pumps is not properly connected, it was found, so that would be fixed.
I'm sorry, what's being pumped? Just
There's an existing stormwater tank, if you look at the plan in the piece of the loop that's furthest, the existing loop, towards the top of the page.
Mm-hmm.
So drainage from within the loop, existing loop area goes into that tank and then is pumped up and into the existing twin culverts that run through the site to the pond. So that was inspected and will be maintained properly.
So I guess the reason why I'm asking the question is, the pond I referred to earlier, that we required water testing to be done. We wanted baseline testing done, and then we wanted continued testing during the phase of construction to make sure it didn't get any worse. What triggers our authority to take action like that on ponds, old historic ponds that have, for lack of a better term, fallen into disrepair?
Well, they proposed to do work on it.
Yeah.
So, so on East Mill, they proposed to
Yeah.
remove invasives,
Sure.
to treat
Now, what about the Osgood Pond? So whose responsibility is that?
the owners of the pond,
So the owner of the pond has got nothing to do with anybody in the room here tonight?
except, well, they do live at Sutton Pond condominiums, but,
Other than living there,
right.
they don't hold title to or have responsibility over,
Their condominium association does,
oh, the association does.
right.
So then, I guess the short, easy answer is the association, if they're concerned about the condition of the pond, should file.
Correct.
Get a contractor and come before us with a filing. I guess that's where I was trying to understand. Where are we with it?
But what they were pointing out was they've approached the condominium association, and it appears the condominium association is not going to undertake that endeavor.
That's their prerogative.
Right.
So,
It's,
that's where I wanted to, that's where I was trying to get. In other words, we can't, unless we have a point source of some kind that we can stop, it doesn't become jurisdictional to us, does it?
No, I mean, if people were interested and, we were to undertake an effort with a private entity, I mean, I could see where we might be interested in assisting them in getting it permitted or helping them from an environmental standpoint if they wanted to do it, but,
Yeah.
in my budget, there isn't the funding to take
No,
on the project, but we could certainly help them look for grants, or, I mean, there are things we can do, but as part of the project before us, they are doing some invasive mitigation, and we are requiring review of their stormwater to make sure they're not discharging, they're removing their TSS, they're doing their piece. I don't know what all the inputs are to that particular pond, to know that there is something more we could require or do. I don't think on this particular site, but if the town's got inputs into the pond, if other private entity, I just don't know.
I'd be real, I mean, it's a great conversation we're having, but I'd be real cautious to point out that there is an extremely complicated
Right.
legal ownership, riparian rights question that comes into play here. You know, who owns the pond, who has rights to the water in the pond, who has rights of flow through the pond, who has rights to discharge into it or draw water from it. I mean, all of that comes into a very, very complicated web of what's going to point any applicant in a particular direction. Then you add to that, once you understand all of that question, then you run into, are we talking about aquatic plant control? Is it eutrophication? Is it in fact migration of suspended solids? And if it is suspended solids, are you looking at a dredging operation? And God forbid if you are, then you got to look at, you know, the historic use of the sediments in the pond. And I mean, likely, like any mill pond in any of the industrial nations, you don't want to be digging in the mud. Very, very complicated, and I want to be real cautious to the butter asking the question and to the applicant filing to make sure that, I mean, something like that falls way, way out of the amendment discussion.
Oh, no, I recognize that. I'm not trying to, in no way am I trying to dump this on the amendment. I'm just asking to try to understand, where do you even begin on these things? Absent an application in front of you, where do you even start if you wanted to prevent a pond from getting any worse? If you wanted to, you know, stop the degradation and prevent it from getting any worse than it is?
Who owns it, who has rights, and who's responsible is where you start.
So it sounds, so that's the answer I didn't want to hear, so I'm all set.
The plan is correct. They don't own the pond, only a portion of it.
Yeah, we're looking at an adjacent land ownership notation on a plan that makes.
Sorry to take up your time here. I know it's valuable. My name is George Stern. I predated all of you because I was chairman of the Conservation Commission here in North Andover a number of years ago. And I think I know Mr. Manzi from years back, but I certainly was here a long, long time ago. I've lived here in town, thank you. I've lived here in town for 52 years. So needless to say, I'm not a native, but I did come from Andover. I just want to say that I live on the pond also, and it's unfortunate that the downstream people have to take care of the upstream problem. You know, if you look at the Google, the pond, you can see exactly how the silt comes into the pond through the sluiceway from the mill. And they're actually, if you go out there and look at it, they're actually islands where the water comes in. And, you know, you look at that drainage. Unfortunately, I never received notice of the first meeting or this meeting, or I certainly would have been here. You look at that drainage pond, or whatever you want to call it, structure. I've seen it overflow. As a matter of fact, where that truck ramp is, it's on the plan, and I think, by the way, they're doing a very nice job. I've seen that totally full of water, up to the loading dock, and trucks just parked there because they couldn't go down in it. Where does that water go? There's one drainage structure in the parking lot across the street. Where does that water go? And that wasn't there all the time until they did the mill, until they redid the mill with Marty Spaggett, I guess his name was. And in back of the mill, they're not in this plan, but there are two structures where they're going to be working. One says, both of them say test wells with metal caps on them, and then there are 3 manholes, and then in another place there are 2 manholes and more test wells. What are they? What are they testing, and why were they put there? And one other question, and that is an amendment, does that open the whole process now, or does that go on to the order of conditions? I don't understand. So whenever they come back, are they going to just ask for an amendment to the original order, because I don't think that's right. I think that they should come back every time they want something and not coattail on their original order of conditions. And those are my comments. I think they're doing a wonderful job, but I'm really tired of seeing that pond get washed away from an upstream source and not a downstream source. If you look at the pond, everything where the condos are on this side is clear. Nothing there. You can walk down to the bank, you can fish, even though there's a no fishing sign, I'll say you can fish. But you come where the mill comes out, and it's all gunk and muck and awful. So I hope you consider some of these things, and I'd like an answer to the amendment question, please.
Anything outside the scope of the original project. So if it exceeds the project that was proposed, so if they were to work on the future development site, I would say that needs to be a new notice of intent. But anything, changes in design happen all the time, and there needs to be a process under which they can make those changes, and that for DEP is the amendment process.
We feel that the drainage that's there today is appropriate and feasible.
Well, they had a whole drainage plan before, but as they said, when they did their geotechnical explorations and found out some of what they proposed wouldn't work, they had to make some changes, and so the changes are what you're seeing tonight. They had a parking plan and an access plan and a stormwater management plan before, and they still have a parking plan and an access plan and a stormwater management plan now. So the scope of the project hasn't changed, just the layout.
But my understanding is that they're not taking the building down because they're nice guys. They're taking the building down because they couldn't drive across the existing culverts. That's what this gentleman said. It wouldn't take the weight.
I think if they were going in the other direction, if they didn't propose building expansion before and they came before us and proposed building expansion now, I would say too that that's a different notice of intent. But they're taking a building down. They're going to end up with grass afterwards. They haven't expanded their project in any way.
Well, you say they're not going to touch that pond. What are they going to do to that? Nothing?
It's just going to stay there.
It doesn't work.
I would say it probably didn't work before.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
But
Okay.
When we paused on that slide about the building demolition, that was exactly my concern, Mr. Stern, was it within the scope of what we would normally consider an amendment? And understanding better that activities that they were proposing was going to require certain wetland protection devices be put in place, and that this demolition wouldn't change any of that, and that it would be stabilized and planted to grass in the end. I was convinced that even though it was beyond the original application, that it in fact was a net benefit to the application, and that's why I was satisfied that it does fall within, in my idea, it falls within the model of an amendment. But sometimes demolition can go awry, and I'm sure there's going to be, and there are requirements for environmental monitors on this type of work. So, not unlike any other project. So I think it does fall within the amendment. Now, you said it doesn't work. You talk about doing nothing to the pond, to Osgood Pond. It's part of this application. We're not saying that in the long run. I think the applicant's not proposing to do anything as part of the pond. It's not before us. If they were, it would, to me, that would be outside of the original application. It would exceed the consideration for an amendment. And then we still ultimately have that ownership, rights, and responsibility question, all three of which have to be answered to understand what might be done out there. So I think it ought not be tagged onto this particular application.
Okay. Well, the project before us is a request for an amendment to the existing order of conditions. Do I hear a motion relative to that?
I'm going to move that we close and issue the amended order of conditions.
Second.
Any comments? regarding the, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
One abstention.
One abstention. Okay, so the amendment passes. And we're on to general business. First item is 242-683, a partial certificate of compliance request for 38 Foxwood Drive.
This is a non-jurisdictional lot, according, Heidi inspected it today. So recommend issuing PCOC.
Good to see you.
Good night.
What do I have?
I move that we issue the PCOC for 242-683.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's it. Nobody's opposed. 242-1533, certificate of compliance request for 16 Berry Street.
We have the 40B that's proposed out there now, the Riding Academy 40B. We had previously issued an order of conditions for a subdivision, so this is an invalid order of conditions. No work was ever started, done, completed, nothing.
Was it recorded?
It was recorded.
Is there a plan to do anything right now on that plan?
Yeah, they're gonna get rolling. They're ready for pre-construction soon, so, or, to talk about pre-construction, not actually before they even put hay bales in the ground, because that's a really big project, but, so, invalid order.
Move that we grant certificate of compliance 242-1533.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So will they have to refile now?
No, they've already refiled and have their order of conditions.
This is the old subdivision that they're not moving
Yeah,
forward.
remember they came in for 7.
Until they got their new,
Been a couple.
I mean, we could have made them close it out before, but they didn't even own the property then, they were just going through the permitting, so this makes sense.
I'm going to recuse myself for 242-1544. You do have a quorum without me.
Yep, do you want to let him know to come in? I think he's out there.
I'll get him. I'll find him for you.
He's been peeking in a couple times.
This is a partial bond release for 26 Main Street.
I don't see him.
Is that Rolf?
I'll look for him.
He was here. So, I kind of want him here because I don't think I fully understand his request, but all he has to do are some plantings in front of the wall. He had a planting plan, a buffer zone restoration plan, and a mitigation plan. And so, as Heidi and I saw it in the multiple times we've been out there, he originally planted just in front of the wall. And then his contractor had taken had plants for behind the wall and in front of the wall and just planted them in front of the wall. So then he moved.
Unable to locate.
The outside?
Okay, so he moved some of the plants behind the wall. But then, I guess Heidi went and inspected again and said, well, now the plants that are supposed to be in front of the wall are not there. What he was saying earlier when he was here was that plows had taken them out, but like last year when Heidi and I inspected, they weren't even there. So I guess there's a little misunderstanding about that. This is all that remains to be done on this project, is the planting plan. It's it. He could have his certificate of compliance. So, right, I don't understand why we would give him back any bond, just finish the project.
He owns it
He's
until he
cleaned the
gets
stormwater, he does have some debris and erosion control to get out of there, but other than that, this is a certificate of compliance. He was talking about amending the planting plan. I can work with him on the planting plan, but he just needs to plant. So,
And the time of compliance must be compliant.
right.
So they paid, they died.
All right. Do I hear a motion relative to the partial bond?
Oh, wait, here he is.
Oh, there we go.
So,
My turn.
I already sort of discussed with them, all that needs to be done is this planting. So giving you a bond back doesn't really make a lot of sense when you could have your whole certificate of compliance if you just plant some plants.
Well, we planted all the plants.
You didn't, though. Heidi and I have been out there multiple times. We went from plants in front
It doesn't matter whether you did or not. Maybe he did, maybe they evaporated, maybe they got beaten up by helicopters, I don't know. But at the time of compliance, and the time of bond release, you need to be substantially compliant with the order. And, I mean, just do it again.
Well, that's why I'm kind of here, because I'm required to let them go for one whole growing season, and I don't think they can make it through a growing season because of the snow and because of the children out there. I should have got a letter from my landscaper, but he did those. Heidi agrees that they were done, and they've all...
All in front of the wall. And
Yes, they were all in front of the wall.
sometimes-
There was a few that weren't put behind the wall. Jennifer went out there, he took some from in front of the wall and put them behind the wall. But I think there's still few that are missing, but I've been out there, I've cleaned behind the wall 4 times, I've done every single thing I'm supposed to do, but I don't know what to do. It's only a $1,000 job, but they're not going to be there when I come before you a year from now.
So
That's my whole point. I was
So
hoping I
what are we
could...
saying? We saying we have a planting plan that's approved as part of the order of conditions that's unbuildable?
No, he's saying that other kids or whoever is gonna come and take the plants out.
Yeah,
again.
and it's all this, that's where they're pushing all the snow, right into the catch basin where all the plantings are. You can see right at the end here, there's really no place else for them to push it. The plants we're talking about are right here. And so these are all, the snow's all pushed and just ruining these. These were planted, these were planted, and these were planted. These are gone. I know the kids, I've cleaned this out. Heidi's asked me 4 times. They keep throwing things down, they keep going and picking them up.
These would be,
Which way is Main Street?
how are these
On
growing?
here.
From plowing snow?
No, I don't know what happened with those, but these here were kids plowed snow. This guy's always complaining that he wants his driveway, so I don't know if he took them down. I'm not out there, but I'm looking for some kind of guidance from you guys. You know, I'll put the money up for this little part, but I don't think they're gonna make it through a planting season. That's my point. It's the only thing that's...
This buffer is very important right there,
Right here, you mean?
especially here, 25-foot
Well,
notice
I
start.
mean,
Yeah,
maybe,
this is the wall I
so
built.
maybe you don't plant them here, maybe you put them, put them in front of the wall back here. They're gonna survive there, you're not gonna get plowed
But
over
what
back
I'm
here.
worried about, Jen, is this is where all the kids play. I don't know if we put some kind of fence, but there's 10, 11 kids in this complex. This is the only place for them to play, and they end up throwing stuff down, they end up jumping on this wall, and, you know, it's I don't know what else to do about it. But
Heidi also said there's erosion control and lumber back in here.
I've been down there 4 times, as Heidi, we've cleaned it out 4 different times. They keep, this guy who lives over
Clean it
here.
out and call me the next day.
Well, that's what I did. Heidi went down, she said, it's fine. I've done that with Heidi.
No, Heidi said her email said there was lumber down there. Okay, well, I mean, I could see where this is maybe problematic.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you plant a couple trees along the wall and call it a day.
That's what I'm gonna do. Whatever you guys tell me to do, I'll go do. I just don't think.
Here's the word fence mentioned.
No, he has a stone wall though, right?
Yeah, but if he wants to use a fence to protect what the plants he's putting up,
Well, I mean, if there's kids in this development, this is Main Street. I'm fine with having some room to play or whatever, but what I'm saying is instead of trying to put like ornamental stuff, maybe you just put a couple birches or something along the wall.
That would be very agreeable.
What about
to me.
the
I think that would
plantings
make
up
a
here?
difference.
Are they
Those are all there.
Yeah, those
They're
are
all there, the kids don't play in here?
Well, everybody can see them out here, and, you know, no one can kind of see them here. So
These over
the
here
kids
are-
aren't hanging on trees and stuff
Those out there?
These are
Maybe the
here.
thing to do is put a
Those
fence
are
across
not
there and keep them out.
Say it again?
Put a fence across there
Well,
and keep
then
them out.
this guy kind of comes out of his garage and turns there. I think maybe the best idea is to put something along here. Because they're going to continue, like this year, I agree, it was a terrible year.
Put a
They just
fence
kept
up to keep
pushing
them out.
that snow back, but,
But are you saying these are okay and these are not?
correct.
but they are throwing stuff down here.
Yep. 4 times I've cleaned it.
Right. So that's one reason why I was like a fence.
But I don't know if it's just the kids, I don't know, if this guy's here, his yard's real messy. And I did put a fence up all the way down here, but not all the way down to here. Of course, I couldn't because it's in the protected area. But this guy has swings and all kinds of
You've got a
junk.
fence down the sideline,
Yes.
and if you put a fence across the top,
the back is not the issue. These plantings are here. It was the plantings out in here.
Yeah,
that
out
are
in,
not
out in here. There's a wall with the wetlands markers on it here.
Well, is it necessary to have
Maybe just
plantings here?
hardier plants here and here, and, I mean, these maybe move them if it's obstructing the guy's car, you know, turning his car around.
What's the benefit
just
of
move
having
them
the
back.
plants where they're
Well, it's just
there
the
isn't.
plant.
Why don't we protect what we can, put a fence up and prevent them from going near the ones that are surviving and from going in there?
River birch. What's it, JC's?
Nothing's gonna stop people from,
Yeah.
people
That's what
traverse
juniper.
this whole bank for fishing. It's been, I mean, it's
Well,
clear.
if these are all right and the rest of them are okay,
Yeah, they kind of don't get, they
maybe
kind
the
of walk
thing is
along
to
the
do
wall.
away with these and forget about them. Just
I
like
would
the
go along,
grass.
I would go along with that.
So these are
I mean,
juniper.
I'll donate the money it costs for that to you guys, if that's what you want. You know, out of my bond. It's,
But isn't that, I mean, isn't that a nice screen for the backyard? I mean, they have some,
I don't disagree that it is, but
Nice
if they,
yard.
if
But if that plow to the end of the street and
yeah,
it falls over every year,
this is where the catch basin empties out right here,
these,
and they just plow, everything just gets plowed on top of it.
that grouping there, I can see where that could be a problem, but these two, I mean,
It's vandalism.
something hardier there.
Well, this, if you go down there and look, this guy doesn't want them. He's complained, and he actually is encroaching on our property, so I didn't bother fighting him. But it's a real mess down there. So I don't know if it's him that's pulling him up or what, but. But I'll replant them, but.
Isn't there
I
a
just don't
fence, isn't there a fence down here?
The fence comes down to about, no, right about here, right to the end of the hot tub.
So he's got a chance to encroach very easily.
Yeah, he's encroaching already. I just didn't want to get into it.
A fence would be
Big thing with it.
sensible in that section there. It would be sensible to put a
Well,
fence
the
there.
problem with that is, like I said, this guy, he wants me to put a bigger driveway. I don't know if he's come to you. I said you have to go to conservation, but he said, there's no place for snow, I can't turn around, you know, it's real hard for me. So he's really complaining about his turnaround area. Because when he just pulls out, he almost has to back into the fence there. So it is a little bit tight for him.
wasn't designed properly, I guess.
Yeah, it really is tight. It works, but if to put another fence here, it would be almost right in his front porch too. 'Cause his house comes right up
So
to
the
there.
the fence comes up to the second driveway, right? I think
it comes right to this driveway, up back down to this driveway.
I think I'm looking at the fence.
Yeah,
It's white?
yes, it's white.
Right, so it comes all the way up to at least beyond the second driveway. So it's all the way up to here.
Okay, could be.
Those the photographs wrong. It goes at least that far, then it's underneath that tree.
Yeah.
So it could go even further.
Yeah, I think, I turn into his driveway sometimes. I think I almost hit the fence when I come out, so I think it comes down to this driveway.
And the reason why I'm looking at that is if the fence does come up that far, I do see a reasonable alternative is take some of the river birches, which I think these three are,
Yeah.
and these are serviceberry.
Yeah.
So take those 6 plants, plant them along there, and put a fence in front of it and protect them. Get it this side of the wall, put the trees behind it, so the kids will stay the hell away from it. And linking the fences together,
Yeah, well, lay it down.
Chokes out the
Fence
neighbor.
Down here, and then, you know, he's got no right to, I mean, what kind of a fence are you putting up?
Well,
One you can't see through?
Yeah.
You'd probably
Then why don't you put one that's
6
chain link
foot,
fence, something you can see
6
through? So at least it doesn't block his view.
What about a post and rail down here, just dividing that? Chain link fence would probably look kind of ugly attached to this white vinyl fence. That's what I'm thinking, you know?
What about the white?
I really don't care what you do. Your concern is that you think the kids are vandalizing the trees and that's why they're not surviving. Whatever
Yeah.
level of vandalizing or playing on them and, you know, whatever, for whatever reason, breaking them.
Yeah.
Whatever barrier you think is going to make those trees survive is what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I'm not sure a post and rail is going to do it. but-
I've already done it once, but I'm required to go through a whole growing season. I don't think I can make it through a whole growing season. with
Jed, did we
them.
didn't require those plants up near the parking area on our own. That was a planning board requirement, or?
This is just the landscape plan that we
Yeah.
received as part of the public
They
record.
accepted the
So,
landscape.
Because it's, what I'm hearing is the stuff that's down in the 25 noticer of the buffer planting.
again, like I said,
Sounds like it is
initially,
surviving.
every
The other
planting he
choice is to
had
do
was
away
in front
with
of the
the
wall. And
plants.
Heidi and I said, some of the plantings are supposed to go behind the wall.
Yeah.
And he moved them. And then it seemed like the plantings in front of the wall were gone for whatever reason.
Right.
So we just assumed maybe the landscaper moved everything, and we just said, according to the plan, there's supposed to be plantings in front of the wall as well. And then that's kind of where we've been to this point.
Just suffice it to say, I mean, I think the commission, it sounds like we're pretty flexible on this. I mean, I don't think we're in love with the
I'm gonna do whatever
specific
you guys
positions
suggest,
on
yeah.
these
Yeah.
plantings. If you guys can figure something out in the field, maybe a combination of a fence extension here or there, and hardier plantings in maybe different spots, especially get that out of there.
The other choice is you can just.
Make something survive and
Now, are these trees?
make it workable.
Those are junipers, proposed to have been junipers.
So the thing is, if this guy over here is concerned with a view, and I don't know whether he is or not.
Yeah, I don't know
But
whether
you
it
can
is.
always talk to him and find out.
Yeah.
You could say, okay, I'm gonna take these down so that doesn't block your view. I'm gonna let you have a view. If you're the one taking them out, if you should be, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if he is.
Then if you take away
the
the view, you don't block his view, then maybe he's got,
Junipers, Joe?
Yeah, 8 to 10. I was wondering how high they went. It's a good sized juniper.
yeah, so they're gonna
But I
potentially.
hired this Aberdeen Landscaping to do all our work, and he did this whole plan according to the plan, and Jennifer could say, hey, you missed a couple, there should be more back here, so I sent them back, and he did that, and then everything kind of disappeared there.
Well, the other
And we
issue
were out of the project almost 6 months by that
Okay,
time.
the other issue too is if this is an area that kids play in, and it becomes a playground,
Yeah.
then maybe getting these shrubberies, these plantings out of there,
I
these
think
out of there.
the best thing to
Can
do
open
would
it up
just
and
be
let
to
'em-
meet you out there and decide what needs to be done, and let's just do it.
That would be, that's what I was hoping you'd say.
You-
That would just go over there. and
You've got to make it work, and we'll be flexible, and we'll work with you.
Right.
How about that?
That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Ownership form,
Jen will tell me what
condos?
to do, and I'll just do it.
Ownership is condos?
That always works.
Right.
Jay will tell me to do, and I'll just do it.
All right.
So it's continued?
It's not a public hearing. He just wants his bond back. And
Yeah.
I said, just plant some plants. I guess what he probably needs to hear is if he plants the plants, we're not gonna hold him to a whole nother year of monitoring. If he plants the plants, gets them in there, we know they're planted, then we'll release his bond and certificate of compliance.
Can you make it less than a year?
We could,
What is it,
if he
two-
plants
what's
them
the
this summer and.
Two growing
and he-
seasons, is
I
it?
think probably the best time to plant them is probably gonna be in September, after the hot.
Trees,
Yeah.
Well, I guess if he got them in the ground and you then wanted to do a partial bond release, and then we could check them again in the spring and give you the full certificate of compliance.
That seems fair enough.
That seem reasonable?
Yeah, you and I will go out there and figure out what you want me to plant. I'll bring the landscaper with me.
Yep.
But it is important that they last. I mean, we don't want to.
Right, we want him to survive the winter. If he
absolutely.
puts them in the fall, then we want to see him in the spring.
Yeah, but I'm not going to debate it until we get to that point, but if they planted them properly and they're done right and they fall victim to the residents, horseplay, I mean, there's got to be some discussion with the condo association, saying, look, clean up your act, because you're going to have an encumbrance on your title by not getting a certificate of compliance. He's going to have all his bond back. At that point, what do you care about not being compliant? It's
Well, he won't have all his money. It would be
Partial, when he gets them
He's not going to
in.
get it all back unless that stuff survives, as long as we ask him to make it survive. So come up with a plan to make it survive, whether it's a fence or, something.
What?
Think ahead.
Combination of planting fence and different plantings,
I mean,
different locations.
do it with the intent that it's going to be there for a long amount of time, not just to satisfy an existing plan or a new one you're coming up with.
But you have my whole bond, that was for everything, and for the whole thing, so everything's done, I'm compliant to everything except for these few plants.
much is the bond?
It's 15,000.
Right, so I'm
It's
saying,
been out for almost 3 years now.
And the value of this aspect is $1,000 at the most?
1,000, maybe
Yeah.
2,000.
Yeah.
I mean, he's asking for a partial bond release now. If you want to give him a partial bond release,
Well, that, I mean, just to trees that we just talked about so quickly, I mean, 3 river birches that aren't there, those are gonna be $400 a piece.
Depends on the size, but.
Yeah, I don't mind if you hold 3,000 or 4,000 of
Well,
them.
we never release more than half to begin with, so even if you're talking about releasing bond, we're only giving him half. That's been the standard since I got here, so
Still
$7,500
leave another 7,500.
plus interest. So if you want to entertain that, I'm sure it'd be great. But what I was saying was, because that's like leverage, or if Al were here, he would say that. When he gets the plants in, we'll give him back half his bond, and then next spring,
But that doesn't sound fair to me, Jen. You get half the bond for...
they only ever release half. If you aren't getting a full certificate of compliance, they've only, I don't care what
You'll
size
never
your
get more
project
than
is, they never give more than half. It's not a fairness issue, it's just policy.
Okay.
But then, come the spring, you get full certificate of compliance, you get the rest of it.
Assuming survivability.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it's,
But I would rather, personally, I would rather see you do less and have it survive than do more and have it disappear in the next year. So if that involves protecting it with a fence or something, I'd be more interested in that than,
Getting more trees.
precise locations of where a plant or a tree is located.
Agreed.
noted.
That's the one thing that frustrates me about a lot of the projects we have, is they have all these great drainage plans, and it's been tested under calculations, and then 2 years later, it's not working because somebody didn't clean something like that, and I find that very frustrating. So I'd rather see something that works and lasts, personally.
So get the plants in and you can come back for a bond release.
Check in the spring. Close it out.
For the balance.
Yeah, for the balance. Yeah.
Okay. We next meet on the 12th?
12th.
So let me ask you a question. If they don't survive the winter, this new plan, you're still holding $7,500 on me, what's going to happen then?
Well, the commission,
This will be the 3rd time I'm planting them. I've already planted them.
It seems to me that you've got an issue with
I mean, I have to go, now we have to go monitor them.
possibly a neighbor taking those fir trees out.
Yeah.
Okay? I would suggest you talk to the neighbor and find out, say, look, I'm not interested in creating problems,
Yeah.
but do you have a view issue? Do you like these trees here? If he doesn't want them there, he wants a view, give him a view. So don't plant trees there to block the view. Talk to the association, the homeowners association. I assume there's one established
Yes.
already. And tell them, say, hey, if you've got kids out there pulling plants out and wrecking these things, you're going to have a problem, because I'm going to be out of here shortly, and you're going to be stuck with this issue on your
Yeah,
lien on your
I'm in
property.
contact with the homeowners association periodically, because she's coming back before you, she's a doctor, she's never home, but I'll replant them, but it just,
Just say, hey, you got to do something to make sure these survive,
Yeah.
so that we can remove this lien that's on
is
the
it planning getting back to bond?
property.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a business issue with the homeowners association at this point. If you're telling me that the current residents are ripping it out and they are within the control of the trustee of the homeowners association, then you got to go to them and say, listen, I'm not going to get involved in that, but you have rights and remedies
Yeah.
that are available between one party and another party outside of what we do here. We just care, our charter is very limited. It doesn't, I hate to say it, to a certain degree, we care why it's not surviving. But the bottom line is, our charter is to make sure it's surviving, and to do the things necessary that doesn't, whether it's somebody pulling it out or because it's a bad location. It means something, but it doesn't change
Yeah. I mean, I
our
planted
charter.
probably 400 plants, and 360 of them still healthy. It's
Yep.
just this one section where they play
Yep.
that they're not, that happens to be in the conservation area, so it's...
And that's what Jen's going to go out and look and work with you on.
Yeah, maybe you can modify the plants that you're putting in, different ones.
Yeah, that's what I
Like
think
that.
Jen can do.
As well as talk to your neighbor about the view issue, then talk to the association about, hey, if I put these plants in, there's a lien on the property and that affects you when you go to sell and all that stuff. It's in your interest to,
To help
work with me and make sure these things survive,
Yeah, I'll give that a try.
so we get rid of the lien.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Great, talk to you, Carly. Are we we going to continue to the 12th for him so we can get some
Yeah.
plants in?
Yes, so moved.
Is it in July?
Second.
The 12th,
All in
August
favor?
12th, or you want to go to the second meeting in August?
Well, I really don't want to plant anything till September, right? Because of...
Go to the second September
Nothing lives
meeting?
in August if you plant it. So,
Anytime you guys will be out there.
yeah, we'll get out there in the meantime, find the plants, I'll get my landscaper, and then he'll put them in.
Second
End of
September.
September, beginning of October will be probably the best planting time, so they'll at least survive the beginning
Okay.
part.
Okay,
Send Al back
thank
in.
you.
Who's moving that one?
I did.
Somebody seconded.
Joe second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody's in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
Lou said we can wait on the vice chair thing till he gets back, if you'll just continue the bylaw regulation revisions for me.
Again, the regulations, I guess,
We'll get to those. Lisa's going on vacation,
Some
but we'll
point
get to them.
in time.
So I just need you to continue them, because that's a public hearing notification.
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Any motion to adjourn?
that's it. A motion to adjourn?
So moved. Somebody second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.